Good morning, and thank you for taking the time out of your Saturday morning to log into this virtual presentation. What you will hear today is a brief recap of the New Buffalo Shoreline Alliance's activities, some specific technical reasons for the Army Corps of Engineers being held responsible for the problem, and our decision to take the legal route against the Army Corps of Engineers. My name is Ted Griswack, and I'm the president of the Alliance, a 501c3 corporation. Our group was started for the purpose of preserving and protecting the beaches and shoreline of Lake Michigan in the southwest communities of New Buffalo Township, and Grand Beach. Our active membership exceeds 500. Our board is made up of the following individuals: Mike Misk, acting vice president from Forest Beach Estates; Brian Burns, treasurer from Grand Beach; Ron Watson, secretary from Sunset Shores; and the following board members at large: Ed Oldest, who's on leave, Sunset Shores; Joe Galetto, Warwick Shores; Paul Johnson Jr., Warwick Shores; Mark Schulte, Forest Beach Villas; Steve Slater, Grand Beach. Please send any questions that you may have regarding the information provided during this presentation to newbuffaloshorelinealliance@gmail.com anytime during or after this presentation. Ron, Steve, Mike, and I, along with Catherine Jones, a partner at O'Hagan & Meyer, will be available live after the presentation to answer these questions. Any questions that remain unanswered at the end of the presentation will be answered via email. Our problem is large and getting larger due to high water. That problem has been exacerbated and become monumental. Over the past 2 years, we have experienced damage never seen before. Please remember, our problem will not go away when the water levels drop. We need protection and sand. Without the sand and protection, there will be no beach. There are some who believe it's a cycle, and they are correct. What no one wants to seem to talk about is the cycles are becoming shorter. The higher water in the cycle is getting higher. There is no sand, and the bottom is getting steeper. All are components to this great problem. Our quest for a solution began approximately 6 years ago this month, after one of the most damaging Halloween storms on record. Since then, we have worked endlessly on seeking a solution and funding for this solution. We have the solution, and it's the same as recommended by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and their planning assistance to the state's littoral analysis and sediment budget prepared for the village of Grand Beach in 2009. We have had their recommendation reviewed by our engineering consultants, Edgewood Resources. They concur that a series of breakwaters, along with beach nourishment, will produce and protect our beaches. A Section 111 study that few people west of St. Joe knew about, completed in 1999 by the Army Corps of Engineers for the city of St. Joseph, Michigan, speaks of the need for continual nourishment of the New Buffalo Harbor. Even with this knowledge, we have not been able to get the ACOE to fix the problem. The standing operating answer has been we have no money. Our group has worked with our electeds, Congressman Upton, Senator Stabenow, Senator Peters, Representative Paquette, Senator Lasada. We have taken them on water tours of the disaster and made countless appeals for their help. They, in turn, have appealed to the Army Corps of Engineers with the same result as we have received. Senator Lasada has introduced Senate Bill 974, which, if passed, would allow permitting for extracting sand from the lake and bringing it back to shore. The Alliance thanks her for her work. We also want to thank Township Supervisor Michelle Height and New Buffalo Mayor Lou O'Donnell, along with Grand Beach Village President Deborah Lindley, for their efforts and support. We have visited Washington twice, meeting again with all of our electeds and the Assistant Secretary of the Army, along with the Office of Budget Management. They have listened and promised to work with us, but they too have the same answer: no money. We have hired consultants in both Washington and Lansing to assist us in seeking funding for the project to no avail. We have applied for numerous grants, but it appears that without cooperation from the Army Corps of Engineers, they are impossible to get. We are now awaiting a meeting with the Attorney General of the state of Michigan to appeal for their joining into our lawsuit. Our latest attempt to get funding for this project was our application for a Section 111 study under the Continuing Authorities Program applied for on our behalf by the Village of Grand Beach. Section 111 authorizes the Corps to investigate, study, plan, and implement projects for the prevention or mitigation of damages to both non-federal public and privately owned shores to the extent that such damages can directly be identified and attributed to the federal navigation works located along the coast and the Great Lakes shorelines of the United States, and shore damage attributable to the Atlantic Intercoastal Waterway and the Gulf Intracoastal Waterway. Under the Continuing Authorities Program, the Corps is authorized to implement such projects without specific congressional authorization. The first phase of this federal interest determination, which is called a FID, is a U.S. Army Corps of Engineers document used to verify that water resource solutions meet the requirements of federal interest and determine if a feasibility study is warranted. The federal share of the first cost of the implementation is $12.5 million or less. The cost of the first phase is $50,000 and is 100% funded by the ACOE. The Army Corps has determined that there is a need for the FID. The second phase, also costing $50,000 and paid for by the Army Corps of Engineers, is the development of a cost and feasibility study and a project management plan. This would determine how much of the repair would be paid for by the Corps, keeping in mind that the maximum would be 52%, as this was the portion of the cost of the harbor that was paid for by the Army Corps. It is conceivable that the Army Corps can only pay 10% of 52%, all of which is unacceptable. When the FID came out, the cost of the third phase was estimated between $300,000 and $700,000, with the first $100,000 being paid for by the Corps and the balance split between the Corps and the NBSA. Unfortunately, when the final numbers do come out, the cost is expected to exceed $1 million. In addition, if this could be a financially viable solution, it would not begin construction until 2025. As the FID was being developed, Ron Watson was contacted by one of the attorneys for the plaintiffs in the Banks versus USA lawsuit, which is a takings lawsuit in St. Joseph, Michigan, that has been tried and a judgment in favor of the plaintiffs granted. There has not been a settlement for all of the plaintiffs as of this date. This brings us to where we are today. We have fought endlessly. It is not right to have those who did not cause the problem to be responsible for a financially burdensome number. We are running out of time. As a result, the NBSA has determined that our best cause of action is a takings lawsuit against the Army Corps of Engineers. Steve will discuss the details in his presentation. This is now the most logical course of action. It will more than likely be resolved in 2 years, and it will get us the money we need to implement our solution to this problem, a problem that will not solve itself. There is not another solution that can work and is affordable. To be successful, we need to be unified. The more plaintiffs we have, the greater our claim, and the more likely that we will be able to either settle or succeed in getting a favorable judgment. We need your support that will enable us to get the solution we need to restore and nourish our beaches and will last for the next 50 years. A solution which will get appreciation to our property values. A solution which will benefit future generations. Who doesn't want this? With this, I would like to welcome Ron Watson to make his presentation.
Good morning. My name is Ron Watson. I've been a director with the NVSA since its inception, and I've served as secretary for the last year. I have an engineering background, largely in fluid mechanics, so that's why I've been very interested in the coastal engineering aspects of the littoral drift on the lake and erosion in the lake. I've worked very closely with Ed Oldis, the founding NVSA director, who is currently on leave, to look at ACO plans, to look at harbor history, and to review many technical documents and recommendations and other critical information that shows the Army Corps of Engineers is responsible for our erosion issues. I plan to share that with you today in the next 10 or 15 minutes. I'm also a board member of the Great Lakes Coalition out of Saugatuck, and I'm president of the Sunset Shores Property Owner Association. I will break my talk into 3 pieces: the pre-construction of the harbor, the design phase, post-construction during which sand nourishment was conducted, and the time period after they stopped doing the sand nourishment. The harbor was authorized on July 16, 1961. The U.S. Corps of Engineers was given the authority through the Chicago office to do this design. Local interests in New Buffalo raised concerns about erosion and nourishment plans. So they actually were able to do a detailed deposition with the chief architect of the breakwaters. He's an hydraulic engineer out of Chicago. And here's what he said in about an 85, 90-page deposition. The harbor will block sand and cause erosion for 2 to 3 miles south of the harbor. A sand nourishment plan must be able to handle conditions as they will arise. That's an open-ended statement about sand nourishment. He admitted they had good physical models and design tools to handle the predicted wave conditions and to ensure navigational safety, but no such tools or knowledge how to measure the impact of the harbor on the littoral drift. He further said that they were very familiar with the negative impacts of the littoral drift on harbors in Michigan City and in St. Joe. And he said, you should not expect anything different in New Buffalo. In fact, the harbor fillets, those are the areas north and south of the harbor. The areas north are where the municipal beach exists, must fill, and then sand will start flowing around the harbor. He made a big point that even after they filled, the sand would not reach the shore for 2 to 3 miles. He stated that erosional effects of the harbor could be mitigated by using offshore breakwaters, groins, or a sand bypass system, but they wouldn't consider those measures unless significant erosion would take place. So the conclusion about the design phase of this discussion is the Army Corps fully understood the damaging erosional impacts of the New Buffalo Harbor. They knew that they would be detrimental to beaches to the south. They had no tools available to model the impact on littoral drift, but they knew sand blockage and erosion would result. The harbor would impact the shorelines for 2 to 3 miles south, even if sand starts to move around the harbor. And the designer said that they would handle any erosional problems by doing nourishment for conditions as they will exist. The next phase is post-harbor construction and the sand nourishment phase. That's 1974 to 1994. During this period, the authority for the harbor was transferred from Chicago to the Detroit office. That organization assumed the North Fillet would, again, that's the area by the municipal beach, would fill in 5 years based on an anticipated impoundment volume of 460,000 cubic yards. The littoral drift rate in the area was 100,000 cubic yards. So they assumed that blockage would occur in 5 years and sand would start flowing around the harbor. That turned out to be a very, very bad assumption. The Army Corps Sand Mitigation Plan, which they call their Artificial Nourishment Plan, shows a 50-year plan with a total of 1.411 million cubic yards of sand to be nourished. The nourished sand was to be placed on a stockpile 3/10 of a mile south of the harbor that was located on some Sunset Shore homeowner property and in the lake. An earlier lawsuit during the design phase forced the homeowners to provide an easement for the feeder beach. And they were told in this deposition that this is going to be their built-in insurance against any future erosion. Turns out the Army Corps of Engineers did not follow their sand mitigation plan, which drew concern and questions from the city and the residents during this period. A number of official Army Corps communications outlined their commitment and ownership to the plan for continued beach nourishment. The Army Corps provided nourishment by trucking in sand and taking sand from the harbor channel and outside the harbor. They did that periodically from 1975 to 1994. According to the Army Corps of Engineers, they claim they placed 549,000 cubic yards of sand on the feeder beaches during that time. During that time, when the beaches were properly nourished, we had relatively healthy beaches, even with record high water in 1986. So we know that nourishment works. The sand amount nourished, however, was much less than what was planned, and even more or less than the amount that was being blocked. When the Army Corps lost funding in 1994, they stopped the artificial nourishment plan. They knew that we continued to have erosion, and severe erosion resulted. They performed some periodic dredging of the harbor, but that amount of sand was not near enough to recover the sand that's being blocked. So in conclusion, for this period, the Army Corps partially followed their nourishment plan from 75 to 94, resulting in replacing a portion of the sand that was blocked by the harbor. However, based on the amount of sand that was being blocked, more should have been done to mitigate erosion, including instituting some of those measures that the designers suggested, such as bypass, groins, and offshore breakwaters. The Army Corps stopped the nourishment plan when they lost their funding in 1994, but we have ample evidence showing that was not their plan and it was not their commitment. It's the responsibility of the Army Corps to address the funding issues, especially when they made a commitment to protect private property. So we're going to discuss now the time period from 95 to today. During that period, there were several written communications from the Army Corps management claiming the harbor is functioning as planned, even as erosion was accelerating south of the harbor. Severe erosion around the City of New Buffalo pump house required the Army Corps to remove the existing stone revetment and build a much larger and more robust stone revetment in 1998. This revetment has required substantial maintenance by the city and even today is being fortified. An internal memo that was authored by the hydraulics group in 1999 shows that New Buffalo Harbor is causing erosion south of the harbor, and the chief hydraulic engineer suggests substantial periodic nourishment, which is not consistent with the harbor is performing as planned that came from the top management. The Army Corps also presented a sand bypass option to the Harbor Commission in 2002, but nothing was implemented. The 2009 study that Ted talked about, the planning assistance to the state that the Army Corps did and was commissioned by the Village of Grand Beach, concluded that the assumptions made in the 1961 that the North Fillet would be filled in 5 years was very wrong. In 2009, the North Fillet was still growing, and the Army Corps said it should fill by 2020, that's today, and it still hasn't filled. But it would grow to an area of 1.722 million square feet. That's over 1.7 million cubic yards. That's 36 football fields of sand that's north of the harbor. The study found that erosion south of the harbor was ongoing and very extreme. In fact, the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality identified only 3 areas in the entire southwest Lake Michigan area as high-risk erosion areas. And guess what they were? Sunset Shores, Weirwood Shores, and Forest Beach. The Army Corps of Engineers recommended that nourishment restart and offshore breakwaters be installed, but they would not fund it. The New Buffalo Shoreline Alliance was formed in 2014 to address the erosion issues and to build healthy beaches south of the harbor. The New Buffalo Shoreline Alliance uncovered and studied many historical, technical, legal, and government documents. We interviewed numerous sources, got support from many local and state federal officials. We hired excellent consultants. We applied for many applications and many applicable applications and grants. I should say many applicable grants and programs, and have worked in great detail with the Army Corps of Engineers to try to solve these problems. In spite of the overwhelming data and the facts proving that the only reason the Army Corps stopped their mitigation program was due to funding, and knowing that erosion would continue, we feel that they still have that major commitment. We have been unable to get them to restart the nourishment program or take proper mitigation actions. NVSA hired the coastline technical consultants to look at our problem. They came up with a similar solution to what the 2009 ACOE study said, but they would add a lot more sand as part of the nourishment and up to 33 offshore breakwaters from the harbor through Grand Beach. This is the approach the Army Corps should have taken once they realized their harbor design and mitigation plans were faulty. Instead, they allowed much private property to be destroyed, required shoreline owners to spend thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars on expensive stone revetments, and have caused serious devaluation of property. In summary, why is the Army Corps of Engineers responsible for our problems? The Army Corps fully understood the negative impact that the New Buffalo Harbor would have on sand transport and erosion. They did not have the necessary tools to predict or even model the amount of sediment the harbor would block, or when or where the sand would finally bypass the harbor would end up. Instead, their plan was to have an as-required nourishment program. They did know that the sand would not return for at least 2 to 3 miles. In short, the harbor was improperly designed, and the post-construction teams responsible for nourishment made very, very wrong assumptions. They came up with the artificial nourishment plan, which they didn't follow, that replaced some of the block sand, but needed to be continued well beyond that initial 5 years when they realized that the harbor, the North Fillet, was not going to fill. They should have modified the plan to add more nourishment and should have implemented the other measures outlined in the original design. Instead, they continued their inadequate nourishment plan for another 15 years, which replaced only a portion of the block sand, then stopped the basic sand nourishment program in 1995 when funding was discontinued. They knew no sand was bypassing to south beaches. They knew severe erosion would occur. The Army Corps abandoned the original nourishment as condition exists agreement. The North Fillet volume continues to fill today, 45 years after the harbor construction, and erosion continues. As I said, the harbor was improperly designed. The post-construction Army Corps team never did their due diligence to complete the actions outlined in the original harbor plans and agreements. They failed to meet this critical responsibility. They placed the public in significant danger of losing their property, which rapidly materialized. It seems that the post-construction Detroit ACO team did not follow any of the Chicago design recommendations. In the period since they stopped nourishment, the Army Corps has claimed that the harbor is performing as planned, yet their own studies have shown that not to be true. The South Beach bottom is steepening, and our revetments will continue to fail. Our cost and damages will only increase if we don't resolve the issues. It will be ongoing and more severe. This is our last chance. We need sand nourishment. We need offshore breakwaters. The Army Corps is responsible for our erosion issues, and they must be held responsible for that. Thank you, and I look forward to any questions or comments you may have.
Good morning. My name is Steve Slater. Thanks to Ted and Ron, along with other members of the Shoreline Alliance Board of Directors, who have spent years of their lives and hundreds of hours researching, documenting, and courting the Army Corps, our elected representatives, and other governmental authorities to solve this problem created by the construction of the harbor and pier. My wife Amy and I have supported and been involved with the Shoreline Alliance since 2017. In 2018, I was elected to the Grand Beach Village Council and assumed the role of Commissioner of Parks and Beaches. Early this year, I asked to be appointed to the Shoreline Alliance Board of Directors, along with Brian Burns from Grand Beach, to help where possible and ensure that Grand Beach had council-level representation on the Shoreline Alliance. As Beach Commissioner, my concern for and attention to the condition of our beaches became paramount. Over the last 3 years, I have become convinced that no single property owner, no single municipality, no single HOA can solve the erosion problem on their lakeshore. Only by working together as a community under the umbrella of the NBSA can we bring the needed political pressure to bear so that the beach and shoreline can be rebuilt. As a Grand Beach Council member, I have seen our village alone spend over $400,000 protecting our access points, pump house, and remaining beach areas. These costs are a fraction of the tens of millions of dollars spent along the lake since 1975. Furthermore, this is not just a lakefront owner problem. I live 2 blocks from the beach in Old Grand Beach. Property values for all owners with deeded beach rights have been challenged due to the Army Corps not living up to their commitments. That is why Amy and I have financially supported the NBSA over the last 3 years. Ted gave you some history, which has led us to this moment in time, and Ron outlined why the current condition of the shoreline is almost exclusively the result of the ACOE building the New Buffalo Harbor and then not fulfilling their promise and responsibility to nourish the beaches. My role is to take these facts, rationalize this pivot from a political solution to a legal solution, and ask for your help. Over the last 6 years, the NBSA has had one mission: restore and maintain the beaches south of New Buffalo Harbor. If not successful, we will have no sand on the beach, even when lake levels go down. Plus, we will have continuing revetment maintenance due to the erosion of the lake bed. Over the last 6 years, the NBSA did the right thing. It worked the political system to drive a political solution to the problem. However, whether we like it or not, the bureaucratic system is designed to stall, transfer blame, transfer costs to other entities. As Ted explained, our best case scenario is more delay and maybe a solution, which would still cost our community tens of millions of dollars for a problem we did not create. Most importantly, 2 years ago, new legal precedent was established that found that the ACOE legally responsible for taking property and property value from shoreline owners. These new realities have led to this pivot from working on a political solution to pursuing a legal solution. A lawsuit by property owners against the ACOE is based upon a takings claim. Government cannot take physical property, sand on the lakeshore, and property value without compensating property owners for their loss. Each property owner, village, city, and HOA has a takings claim against the Army Corps of Engineers. The value of the claim will be determined by the total of the lakefront footage represented in our lawsuit. Our goal is to get 100% of lakefront property owners and HOAs and villages to join in the suit to bring the strongest possible claim and highest level of political pressure to bear on the ACOE. By participating in this combined lawsuit, no individual landowner has to bear the cost of litigation. Under the NBSA umbrella, many hands will make light work. When a high percentage of lakefront owners lend their name to this lawsuit, the takings claim not only increases the damages we can demand, but will also have a strong influence and pressure on all government agencies to resolve this claim quickly and fairly. A lawsuit against the Army Corps of Engineers is our last and best alternative to generate the $75 million or more needed to build breakwaters, nourish the beaches, and create a true long-term solution. Settlement funds will go to an irrevocable trust for beach restoration rather than the pockets of individual landowners. A community board will oversee the trust, and any excess funds from the settlement will be used to fund a sandbank for future nourishment. Today, we are asking you for the following. First, if you are a shoreline landowner, we are asking you to join the lawsuit. As a part of joining the lawsuit, participants would agree to commit settlement dollars to the Irrevocable Beach Restoration Trust. Upon joining, our legal team will need a copy of each landowner's deed, a recent tax bill, and the dollar cost of beach protection dollars spent from 1975 to the present. A consultant will then determine the value of the taking attributable to each parcel of lake frontage and that will total to our claim. We want to emphasize that beyond providing accurate information to the legal team, individual property owners will have very little time investment or effort into this lawsuit, and absolutely no liability for the cost of the lawsuit or any other liability. Now, I've been in business for a long time. I'm extremely wary of open-ended legal costs for a hoped-for outcome. I want to emphasize that this is not the case, so let me explain. Our law firm will be O'Hagan Meyer. They are headquartered in Chicago and have 200 plus lawyers in 14 locations throughout the country. They have extensive experience in the area of takings litigation. Catherine Jones, a partner in the firm, is on the call today to participate in the Q&A following this webinar. As a firm, they believe that Shoreline owners are in a strong position because of the precedent established 2 years ago in a similar lawsuit. O'Hagan Meyer is confident in this claim. They have proposed an agreement whereby all litigation will be performed, including any appeals, for a maximum legal fee of $400,000. If fees do exceed $400,000, an additional contingency fee of 5% will be earned by the law firm only if the lawsuit is successful. If the fees are less than $400,000, the law firm and the NBSA will split the underage with the law firm. Finally, if the lawsuit is successful, the Army Corps is responsible for reimbursing the NBSA for all legal fees. Again, this arrangement caps potential out-of-pocket costs at $400,000, and if the lawsuit is successful, the legal fees would be reimbursed by the ACOE. We are conducting this webinar today to ask for lakefront owners to join in this lawsuit and to ask all residents and members of the NBSA to participate in funding the $400,000 in legal fees. Helping to fund this legal effort is a prudent investment for all residents of Harbor Country. For lakefront owners, after spending hundreds of thousands of dollars protecting their homes, contributing to this legal fund is a prudent investment. For homeowners with deeded beach rights, like Amy and I, protecting the value of our home and the enjoyment of the beach is also a prudent investment. And for any other resident who lives and works in our community, a long-term solution toward protecting a good beach will benefit them as well. We are suggesting a 2-year commitment of $4,000 for Shoreline owners and a 2-year commitment of $2,000 for offshore owners with deeded beach rights. This can be paid through installments over the course of 2 years. Please keep in mind that all contributions to the NBSA for this effort are tax deductible, as the NBSA is a not-for-profit 501c3. The NBSA board consists of volunteer board of directors, but we are unanimously committed to this legal effort and have committed over $20,000 to this legal fund to jumpstart the fundraising effort. We will now open up the presentation to answer any questions you may have submitted.
I would also like to thank Ezra Scott for his help over the past 6 years in working with us in attempting to get a resolution to this problem. I want to thank everybody for their time and attention this morning. I want to remind them that success is dependent upon unity, participation, and financial support for this cause. We will be contacting all involved homeowners in the very near future to arrange for necessary signatures and documents to complete this action. Please remember, we are a 501c3 corporation. Your contributions for use in this lawsuit are fully tax deductible. Persons wishing to donate can contact Brian Burns directly at 312-912-7908, by email at bbyrnes.nbsa@gmail.com, or mail a donation to New Buffalo Shoreline Alliance at P.O. Box 425, New Buffalo, Michigan 49117. We accept checks, credit cards, or electronic contributions through our website. If you have any questions regarding donating, you can call Brian at any time. We will be keeping you informed on this endeavor via periodic updates to our email and our website. This presentation will be uploaded and available for view within 24 hours. It has to go to the YouTube process to be edited for family friendliness. With that, we'll open up for questions. The first question we have is from Rebecca M. If I sell my lakefront house in Grand Beach at a large loss, price significantly reduced due to the direct lack of beach, and ACOE is held liable, will I be able, having standing, to recover the financial loss from ACOE? The short answer to that is no. The process of this lawsuit will be we will come to the homeowners and ask them to sign an agreement that puts the award from the lawsuit into a irrevocable trust for the purpose of sand replenishment, breakwaters, and maintenance to the breakwaters and beach going forward. The reward, the recovery, will come from appreciation in land value. So the person who owns the property at the time of the judgment will receive the benefits of the lawsuit. Our second question, Joseph F. When this started, we agreed a lawsuit was not an option. Now it's our only option. How long has the St. Joseph cause been taken, and why do you believe our case would be successful and take 2 years? Other parts of the question, will the suit include the cost of the suit in the damages sought? What will it result in? What would our next steps be? Have we investigated raising our own funds for the project? If raised, when will we be able to start? I'm going to answer two pieces of the question, and then I'm going to defer to Katie Jones, our attorney. When we started this endeavor 6 years ago, we sought legal opinion from 2 law firms, and both of those law firms came up with a cost that was what we considered to be insurmountable, $2 million or more, and potentially a 10 to 20-year lawsuit. Since the action, the Banks versus USA in St. Joe has been settled, we feel there is current case law that would move this ahead quickly. In addition, as you've heard, we have negotiated legal fees capped at $400,000, which is substantially less than the amount spent in St. Joe. With that, I will pass this over to Katie.
Sorry, I was muted. Good morning. With respect to the timing of the lawsuit, as everyone can, I'm sure, appreciate that, lawsuits take on a life of their own, but the legal issues here, given the litigation in Stevensville, have already been honed in, so to speak. And so we feel that there's enough legal precedent now out there that a lot of the issues that had to be litigated in the Stevensville case have already been decided.
Next question is from Mike M. What is the timeline of the lawsuit? When will it start? An anticipated timetable from there. Again, I will defer a piece of this to Katie. The when will it start question, I would assume would be 60 to 90 days, as it's going to take time to, one, get the documents drawn up, get a plan, our plan put into writing in an understandable version, and making sure that we have received the necessary commitments from homeowners to cover the legal fees. Katie?
Yeah, the lawsuit, like you said, can be filed as soon as we get the documentation in place and people signed up, and we can, start working towards getting that on file in a fairly short basis.
And how about the timetable from there?
Once the complaint's on file, generally you'll go through a discovery process, and, we'll start working on some of the legal issues. And, like we said, we're hoping that we're looking at a much, much shorter time frame than in the Stevensville case.
Thank you. Another question from Mike M. Is there a link for replay so my neighbors can see it? And what communities are under the NBSA umbrella? There will be a link available to see the presentation. That link will be forwarded via email and posted on our website. It will be given to us from YouTube as soon as they put their stamp of approval on the presentation, which should be approximately 24 hours. Communities covered on the NBSA umbrella right now are Sunset Shores, Warwick Shores, Forest Beach Villas, Forest Beach Estates, Grand Beach, the City of New Buffalo, and Dunewood. Last question we have is from Chris C. How did you come up with your 4,000 and 2,000 figures for donations? We've looked at the cost or the cap on the legal fees of 400,000. Plus we put a contingent on for extra things that we will need to do. There are roughly 131 homeowners and 3 HOAs, and we did some math, and those were the numbers we came up with. We have no more questions.
Ted, I'd like to add something to Rebecca M.
Sure.
Okay, Rebecca M., who asked the question about if I sell my lakefront house at a loss, will I be able to recover anything from my financial loss from the Army Corps of Engineers? I'd like to say that once our lawsuit is settled and the trust is funded, there'll be an immediate appreciation of properties south of the harbor. And once because people will know that they will get a beach soon. Once the beach is nourished, and once we have wave attenuation devices like breakwaters, okay, installed, we get our beaches back, there'll not only be future costs reduced for homeowners, but the value of the property will be significantly increased. The return from this lawsuit is going to be huge. So that's why we need to get everybody to buy in, to opt in, and support it, because it'll give us a lot more leverage with the Army Corps in this lawsuit. And Katie, do you want to add anything to that?
The more homeowners we have, the stronger the lawsuit is.
We have one more question that came in from Joseph F. If we raise the funds ourselves for the revetment while continuing the suit, if the suit is successful, can the damages include the amount already expended? In calculating the damages, one of the numbers used will be the cost of the revetments that have already been installed by either the HOAs or private homeowners. With regard to raising the funds ourselves for the revetment, I'm going to have to defer that to Katie, because I do not believe, in fact, I will say I know, that whatever monies we win in the judgment cannot be given back to personal owners. If we do that, we violate the 501c3, and none of the contributions made for the purpose of the lawsuit will be tax deductible. Katie, am I right on that?
You are, yes.
And the damages started in 1975. They include all the costs of revetments since 1975, the loss of your beach, the loss of your land, the loss of your property value due to the harbor. Those will all be accumulated to determine the total amount of damages. And for every person that opt-ins, that we get to include that value. And we want that number to be appropriate to what the damages that actually have occurred. So that's why we need everybody to participate. You got to get your neighbors to understand this, and if necessary, you could have them talk to us, and there'll be a lot more communication on this, I am sure.
We've got another question from Ann P. How long would you expect it to take to get beaches back? From the time we were awarded, well, let's put it this way, we would file the lawsuit, and simultaneously with filing the lawsuit, part of what the NBSA would be doing is seeking permits from Deagle to do the project when we were successful with the suit. We expect the suit to be 2 to 3 years, as Katie said, but that's questionable. The legal process is the legal process. We're hoping for 2 to 3 years. Our estimation from the engineers when we started this project is that it would be about a 2-year start to finish once the permits were received. So if the lawsuit took 2 years and the NBSA, with the commitment of the communities, would be working on getting permits during the time of the lawsuit, there'd be an award, and once the award came, we would start process of building the breakwaters. Once the breakwaters were in, we would replenish the beaches. So it's probably 4 years from the time the lawsuit starts that you would see a bigger beach.
The nourishment can happen quite quickly.
The nourishment would be very quick. We just wouldn't want to nourish it completely, because without the breakwaters, nourishment's going to disappear pretty quick.
We're going to be visiting the Ogden Dunes after this call. They've just nourished their beaches, and it took them 3 weeks. And their beach probably has grown several hundred feet by offshore dredging. So nourishment is quick. Making sure that you keep the sand on shore with the breakwaters or whatever wave attenuation technique we end up using will take a little bit longer, as Ted said.
Next question is from James, and Katie, I'm going to defer it to you. Is there a risk that the earlier case that we are relying on to establish precedent is ultimately appealed, and that the basis for our lawsuit could be overturned?
So the Stevensville case has been appealed already on 3 separate bases. So absent a petition to the United States Supreme Court, which is probably unlikely, that precedent should be good precedent moving forward.
Katie, how long do they have to appeal to the Supreme Court?
You typically have 60 days or 30 days after final judgment in the case. There has been, I believe, 1 writ already filed after an appeal by the appellate court was issued, and it was denied.
Okay, thank you.
And I think the New Buffalo case, and I examined the Stevensville case, and I'm no lawyer, but I did discuss this with Katie. The New Buffalo case seems to be stronger in terms of what the Army Corps has done and what they didn't do, and the cause and effect of this scenario. And of course, our installation was 1975. Stevensville's was much, much earlier than that. So I don't know if Katie wants to say anything, but when I first talked to Katie, she felt, pretty positive about our case.
Next question, L and F. Is there written information available to share with homeowners? There will be written information to share with homeowners, and we'll be visiting each homeowner with packets and information and leaving it with them for them to either seek legal opinion or just for their own review. And we'll also be posting a facsimile of all the documents that we're presenting to the homeowners on our website. That was the last question we have, so I would like to thank everybody for being here. Katie, thank you for your participation. Have a good weekend, everybody. Thank you.